Well, my name is Sakoni Prince of SakoniPrince.com, where we make motivation personal by introducing you to yourself. I'm a motivational speaker, a trainer, and a coach. I'm also an author. I help people in the area of personal development and leadership development because I believe that you can't lead others until you learn how to lead yourself. But once you learn how to lead yourself, the next logical step is that you lead other people.
Sakoni Prince is the best keynote I've ever seen.
He really encouraged me so much.
He has this ability of seeing in people what they don't see in themselves.
He was so confident. When he was coming to the stage, you could see like, wow, this is a lion.
Any actor that's going for a role, they do a case study. If I'm going to be a fry cook, I go to a restaurant and watch people that are fry cooks. If I'm going to be a mob boss, I go and, well, maybe not go to with a mob, but you take some notes as to what they do. Our children are watching us. What can they reference when they step into our shoes? I do what I do because I believe that people have truly yet to understand their purpose. Once you know who you are, nothing can stop you. But until you know who you are, anything can. So my goal is to really help people to understand their purpose and their calling. And oftentimes they have the answers themselves, but they're not asking the right questions. So I help people to get to that place to where they look at themselves, they step back and they see how they've been a help to those around them and what really drives them. And from that, they really understand the value of it. They learn to value their value and see what value their value brings. Because a lot of people, they have yet to do that. Until you know who you are, anything can stop you. But once you know who you are, nothing can stop you. I want you to understand that you are blessed. That you are blessed to be a blessing. That there is somebody looking up to you. They're looking at you. Don't ever forget that. Because if you ever do, you're going to leave them without a mind.
I've learned so much and I've experienced a lot of interactions with people.
The practical approach, like you can't just sit down there, you have to walk up to an opportunity. Sometimes you have to grab the opportunity. Sometimes you have to fight for the opportunity. There's so much life lessons.
I think from today onwards, I'll stretch out and reach to higher levels.
Hello, everybody. How you doing today? This is Sakoni Prince, and I am so excited to be able to actually share with you my podcast, H.E.A.L. And H.E.A.L is an acronym for Help, Elevate, and Learn. It's a guide for healing your inner child. It also accompanies my book by the same name, but the podcast is really to start the conversation. A lot of you may know me as Sakoni Prince of SakoniPrince.com, where we make motivation personal. We're introducing you to yourself. I started off with doing personal development, and then I added leadership development because I firmly believe that you can't lead others until you lead yourself. Once you learn how to lead yourself, the next logical step is to lead other people. But in the process of me helping people and introducing people to themselves, I realized something. I was just trying to introduce them to their adult self, not realizing that there was a part of them, there's an aspect of the personality that was being overlooked. And that aspect was their inner child. Oftentimes we do things and we really don't know why we do them. We really haven't taken a step back to look and see why we do what we do. And oftentimes those come from our inner child trauma or inner child wounds. We'll just chalk it up to, oh, well, that's just the way I am. But the reality is something has caused us to be that way. It's not what you do, but why you do it. So this podcast is really going to start off focusing on just starting the conversation. And I have a disclaimer, I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but I've dealt enough with this subject to be able to actually write this book and also host this podcast. And again, I want to start the conversation. I want to make it normal for us to be able to actually talk about some of our mental health and some things that may be weighing on us. Now, I will tell you this, even while I was writing my book, one of the things I kept doing, especially when I had certain exercises in there, I would quickly say, look, if anything in this book triggers you, put it down and seek professional help. And that's the same thing I want to do even with this podcast. If there's something that's said or something that triggers you while watching this podcast, make a note of it and also go and get some professional help. Because again, I want to make it normal for us to talk about our mental health and the things that are really weighing on us that we can hardly share with anybody else. During the course of me doing this podcast, I'm going to have professional psychologists and psychiatrists and even therapists come on the show to share their opinions about certain things that affect us as individuals. And so you can definitely look forward to that. I know last week I did my pre-recorded launch of my podcast, but tonight I wanted to go live. And I wanted to actually share with you some things which I think were really are going to help you look at yourself in a different light. And you know what? I did an outline, which I'm going to be reading now, because I really want to talk about, of course, like the purpose of this podcast. Again, it's to start the conversation. It's to really focus on opening up about those things which we rarely talk about, those things that weigh on us, those things that we try to forget about and push out of our mind, but they're always there. They're showing up on our jobs and in our relationships. They're showing up with our businesses or our diet or the project they were working on. Our insecurities show up at the most inopportune times. But if we never take the time to really deal with them, if we never take the time to address them and talk about them, what happens is they continue to show up and snag us and keep us from moving forward. So the purpose of this podcast is to really have us take an objective look at ourselves so that we can actually be able to see why I do what I do. And then, is there anything I can do to change it? And again, like I've oftentimes said, if you need professional help, get it. It's okay for you to get the help that you need. Now, a couple of years ago, I had an opportunity to actually do a presentation at a Focus Women's Group here in Mobile, Alabama. It was a conference, and I had a chance to speak to a room full of women. And during the course of that presentation, I talked about what their mindset. But at the end of the presentation, I did a quick exercise, which I honestly believe it was one of the things that really kind of just turned the whole tables on what they were dealing with. In fact, I'm going to pull that up for us right now so we can actually see that, because this video, and this is just an excerpt of the presentation, and I want to make sure that you really check out what it is we did. And I'll put the link to the entire presentation in this video. We'll probably have to do it afterwards, but I'll put the link to the entire presentation so you can watch the entire thing. But this particular exercise here, it made a difference in so many women's lives. So I'm going to play that now.
But before we get to this, there's something that I want all of us to do. First of all, secure your valuables. I mean, meaning that you know where your purse and your phone is. Because what I want you to do is I want you to take your hand, put it over your heart, and I want you to close your eyes. And I want you to think about yourself as a little child. I want you to think about that little girl that you still are carrying inside of you. I want you to think about how proud she is of you right now. In spite of everything that you've gone through, everything that you face, she's proud of you because you survived everything that you've gone through. But I also want you to continue to make her proud by pointing to other people. Now, while you have your eyes still closed, I want you to think about the person that you can pour into. And they may be your same age. They may not necessarily be younger than you. Some of them may even be older than you. there's somebody you can impact, somebody you can affect, somebody you can actually make a difference in their life And before this week is over, I want you to reach out to them. I don't care whether it's for a phone call, whether it's a letter, a text, a DM, whatever you have to do, pour into them. But first you have to pour into yourself. All right, you can open your eyes now. I have created, on my website, there is a... All right, I'm gonna stop it right there. But yes, I will put the link to that entire presentation around this video so you can check that out as well. But I noticed that when I did that exercise, how many women afterwards came up to me and thanked me for that. Because oftentimes we forget that we survived our childhood. A lot of people want to forget about it. They don't want to think about what they went through, how they got to where they are. But the reality is that child survived that so we could be who we are today. And so going through that process, it really allowed them to think about that little child and how proud she would be, that little girl, how proud she was of the woman that they became. And this being International Women's Day, I think it's so befitting that I showed that clip because, again, it just shows the strength that a lot of women have and the things that they've gone through in order to be able to accomplish what they do today. So when it comes to talking about your inner child, we really want to focus on taking a look at what went into making you who you are. You know, in my book, I talk about in chapter 1, I want to introduce you to someone. And when I was younger, my mother would call me Coney, not Saucony, but Coney. And that's a name that only my mother can call me, so don't y'all be calling me that. But I remember that name is a name, in fact, that I've given to my inner child. And it's amazing how when you think back to those formative years of your life and the things that you've dealt with, the things that you, dare I even say suffer, or should I say survived? When you think about all of those things, how does it make you feel? Is your childhood a happy one? Is it filled with fond memories and everything going perfect, or in fact, with their challenges? And a lot of them don't have to be physical or emotional or sexual, but there could be some things that you went through that were psychological or mental. You know, being treated like you were less than someone else because of your age or your stage of life. So I want us to think about the life we lived growing up. And if there was anything about it we could change, anything at all, what would it be? Could it be that we had more money? Could it be that we lived in a better neighborhood? Could it be that we had a bigger house, or I had my own room? There's so many things that we could change. But my question is, what affected you? And not only affected you, but what still affects you? Now, I know this is for some of the old schools and some of the old heads. There was a show called Malcolm and Eddie, starring Malcolm Jamal Warner and Eddie Griffin. And I remember one particular episode where it showed the two polarizations, how extreme they were. Eddie's character was one who was just kind of spend all the money you can. Malcolm's character was like, let's can all the money we get. And I remember they asked each other the same question. They said, why are you the way that you are? And believe it or not, both of them had the same answer. One of them said, Eddie said, when I was younger, I didn't have anything to spend. So now that I got it, I'm going to spend it all. Malcolm's character said, when I was younger, I didn't have anything to spend. So now that I'm older, I'm going to save it all. You got two circumstances that are almost identical, but two people have two totally different and opposing reactions or behaviors to them. That's why you can have siblings that grew up in the same house with the same parents and turn out totally different. One learned what not to do, one learned what to do. And it could be working hard. It could be, there are a ton of things that people can actually draw from and get from their childhood. I've shared this story several times, and I know it's needful to even share now.
because we never realize how our childhood impacts us. I had a good friend of mine, and I know I've shared the story. I've shared his name, Kevin Wilson. He's a business partner, in fact, with my coach, Dr. Ruben West, and he knows I've shared in his presence, and I've given him credit for it. But he talked about how his father spent a whole lot of time working, and as a child growing up, he kind of felt a certain way because his father was always gone. And he said to himself, he said, you know what? When I get older, when I grow up, I'm not going to be gone all the time. I'm going to be home with my kids so they can know who I am, so they can spend time with me. And he had an issue because he thought his father loved work more than he did, more than his father loved them. Well, it wasn't until the funeral of his grandfather that Kevin's father pulled him to the side and said, hey, the reason why I worked as hard as I did, the reason why I was gone so much, the reason why I was hardly home was because my father didn't take being a father seriously. And there were plenty of days that we went to bed on hungry stomachs. And he said, I made a promise to myself, my kids wouldn't know what it was like to go to bed hungry. It's funny that him taking that position caused Kevin to take his position, because Kevin said, I want to make sure my children don't know what it's like not to have me around. Those decisions were made when they were children. It still impacts them today, but those decisions were made when they were children. Kevin's father made the decision, my children aren't going to go to bed hungry. When I become a father, I'm not going to let them be like that. Kevin made a decision when he was young. He said, I'm going to make sure that my children know that I love them, that I'm there for them. So what promise have you made to yourself as a child? What promise have you made that you will not allow anybody to keep you from doing? I know for myself, me, and speaking of myself now, seeing my mother be a single parent, seeing her struggle to do a lot of stuff she did on her own, I made a promise to myself. I didn't know I made it, but I did. And that promise was, my wife and my children won't know what it's like not to have me around. And because of that, every opportunity I get to get back home, to be here with my kids, to be there for them, I am, because of that promise I made to myself when I was a child. I have another good friend of mine. He said that when his father told him, when you graduate high school, I'm going to buy you a car. And he told him that, and he was so excited because his father made him that promise. The only problem that happened was that when his graduation came, there was no car. He made a promise. My friend made a promise to himself. He said, every time one of my children graduate, I'm going to buy them a car. Now, they had no clue. They had nothing to do with it. They didn't even have a choice in the matter. He made the promise to himself when he was a teenager that every time one of his children graduated high school, they would get a car. He kept that promise to himself. So my question to you is, what promise did you make to yourself, to the younger version of you? What promise did you make to actually change the circumstances that you were in? What promise did you make? Some people made promises like, I just want a home cooked meal. I'm tired of eating fast food all the time. When I get grown, I'm going to make sure that my children, my family has a well-cooked meal. Some people say, I just want to have a clean house. I grew up in a situation where it wasn't as sanitary as I wanted it. So when I get up, when I get my own, I'm going to make sure the house is clean. Somebody else said, I want to make sure that I don't have a lack for anything. My children don't have a lack for anything. If they want something, I can buy it. So I want to make the money necessary to be able to actually meet that need. And so many times those promises, again, are made when we are children. They're made in our youthful age. So when we consider how pivotal that is and how important it is, why not look at how those years are affecting us now? Because anybody would tell you that those formative years, they set a precedence for the rest of your life. And if we had anything that happened during those years, any trauma, any negatively impactful things, they show up. And they show up at the most inopportune times. I would tell people all the time, I say, listen, never let your emotions drive. They're not covered on your insurance. I would say that again. Never let your emotions drive because they're not covered on your insurance. And that's what happens. A lot of people let their inner child drive. They give them the keys and they let them drive. But the problem is the adult version of them have to deal with the fallout. The inner child crawls back in the back seat, gets in the booster seat, buckles up, and like, now you have to deal with that. Yeah, I know I'm the one who did it, but you gave me the keys. So what I want us to do is I want us to understand that we have a part of us that have yet to fully develop and that may be wounded. We may have ignored it. We may have pacified it. In fact, we may have pushed it in a corner. But I want us to take the time to just really think about the little boy or the little girl that's still living in all of us. You will be surprised how many people just want to have that healing because they see how it's affecting their lives. They see how it's causing them to have issues in their relationships, on their jobs, with their parents, with their siblings, with other family members. And again, I don't have all the answers. I don't have all the solutions. I want to start the conversation. I want to be able to actually talk about some of the things that caused us pain. And for us, if you need professional help, please get it. I've gone to therapy and it has helped me tremendously. And I'm not ashamed to say it. And especially as a Black man, we have a stigma about our mental health. But I'm telling you, in this day and time, you got to talk to somebody. Like I said before, we all need somebody we can throw up on. So I want to offer this safe space for us to be able to talk about those things. And we don't have to get into sordid details. You don't have to name names. But I want us to get the help. I want us to get the relief that we need. And we're going to have some exercises coming up. I'm telling you, you don't want to miss those because they are going to help you to get the stuff out. I talked about throwing up. We all need somebody we can throw up on. When our bodies are sick, one of the first things it does is tries to get whatever's in us out. Sometimes it comes out both ends. We throw it up. We try to get it out before the healing can start. And that's what needs to happen even with our inner child trauma. We have to have a safe space that we can get it out. And sometimes that's journaling, that's writing it down. And that's one of the exercises we're going to go through, but not tonight. Tonight, I just wanted to come on here live and just share with each and every one of you that this is a passion that God has given me and something that I'm excited about because I know, yes, I'm still introducing people to themselves, but again, there was a portion that we overlooked. That's our inner child. Now, some people are healed. Some people are healed enough to where they can help other folks, and that's great. But I know a lot of people aren't. And a lot of people need a place to vent, a place to talk about what it is they went through, what it is they've gone through. And again, you don't have to share all this with anybody. Find somebody you know and trust, a good friend, a counselor, a pastor, a therapist if you have to. But I want to encourage you. My job with this podcast is to encourage you to check on you. I'm not talking about introducing you to yourself, but I want you to look inside of you and see, am I okay? Is there anything I need to talk out, to walk out, to work on? Is there anything I need to focus on? Because I know that that's going to help. It's going to help you get to a better place and a better space. And listen, I do have a lot of people that are tuning in. I am so excited that y'all are watching. And I want you to do me a favor. If you can, I want you to put in the feed where you're watching from. And if anything I've said so far has really resonated with you, I'm checking out some of these, and I am bad at this. I should have got my glasses because I'm trying to read this on my phone. But I am so glad to have all of you tuning in. Next time, I'm going to have this set up on my computer screen so I can read enough, so I can read the message and the people that are there, so I can call your name out. Because I really want you to participate. I really want you to be a part of this. And what I also want to do, for those that want to be on the podcast and just share a little bit, and we can chop it up, I want you to let me know. You can inbox me and let me know that you want to be on. And again, we don't have to hear all of the sordid details, and we don't have to have all of the names named. But if you think that this podcast can really help, if you think you can help somebody else, if you've healed in a certain area, if there are some coping mechanisms that you have, we would definitely love to hear those, because a lot of people deal with this. All of us had a childhood, and not all of them were pretty. Not all of them were wonderful and great. Not all of them were ABC after school specials. So I want to make it, again, I want to make it commonplace for us to be able, and I'm not talking about having a pity party or a gripe session, but for us to face our fears and face the things that have hindered us. Because the end result, I want us to live a better life. I mean, that's why I'm doing this anyway. Because I want us to live a better life. I want us to really walk into the place that God intended for us to have. And that's one of the reasons why I'm doing this particular thing. So listen, I'm going to wrap this live up right now, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to read some of the comments. I thank all of y'all for tuning in and commenting. Let me know where you're tuning in from. But before I wrap up, I want to give you this charge. I want you to take a moment. Take a moment. Sit somewhere quiet and just think about your childhood. And I want you to think about the feelings that you have thinking about your childhood. I want you to, and not just feel them. Oh, and this is getting into the book, which is going to be coming out pretty soon. Oh, I can't wait for y'all to order it. You can find out more about it now by going to seconoprince.com/heal. It should be at the bottom of there it is right there. Go to seconoprince.com/heal. But there are things that we have yet to truly do when it comes to our own mental health and healing our inner child trauma. And I want you to think about your childhood, and I want you to write down in one word, if you had to describe your childhood in one word, what would that be? And I know that's limited to so many people, but imagine, in fact, the feelings that you have in reference to your childhood. I'm going to say this and I'm getting ready to close. Dr. Charles Dent, I had lunch with him. Just an amazing individual. He asked me this question. It's really kind of threw me off. Because normally people will say, how are you doing? He asked me the question, what are you feeling? Not how do you feel, what do you feel? That's a totally different question, because how are you feeling just deals with your physical body, what you can touch. I mean, in fact, your five senses. How are you feeling? But what are you feeling? That goes to your inner core, to your mental and your emotional health. What are you feeling? So when you think about your childhood, my question to you is, what do you feel? If you had to sum that up, and I know I said one word, but you can write it down. You could write a sentence if you have to write a paragraph. But I want you to take the time to think about the most formative years of your life and how they are still impacting and echoing throughout your life even today. And we're going to talk about it. We're going to have some discussions. I already have somebody lined up for next week, and I am super excited. I'm not going to tell you who it is, but you got to tune in and check out who it is. And I'm telling you, this is going to be an amazing podcast. It's going to be amazing, not because of me, but because of you. Hey, look, this is Sakoni Prince of SakoniPrince.com, where we make motivation personal. We're introducing you to yourself. And again, this is my podcast, H.E.A.L. H.E.A.L is acronym for Help, Elevate, and Learn, a guide for healing your inner child. and you want to tune in every week to see the guests we have, the exercise we have, and I want to see your growth. I want testimonies. I want you to be able to tell people, I've been checking out this podcast. It's also going to be on Spotify, iHeart Radio, my YouTube channel. It's going to be everywhere so somebody can get this valuable information. And again, you want to find out more about the book, and you can even pre-order SecondaPrince.com/H.E.A.L. And I can't wait for you to read it, because once you do, I'm actually going to have, I don't know, maybe 10, 20 of you come on and talk about what the book did for you and what you got out of the book. Oh, I can't wait for that. I cannot wait for that. But listen, again, I want to thank each and every one of you for everything, for just tuning in, for giving me your valuable time, which I know you can't get back, but I am so appreciative that you spent it with me today. So with that being said, I will see y'all next time. Talk to you later. Bye. Well, my name is Seconi Prince of SeconiPrince.com, where we make motivation personal by introducing you to yourself. I'm a motivational speaker, a trainer, and a coach. I'm also an author. I help people in the area of personal development and leadership development, because I believe that you can't lead others until you learn how to lead yourself. But once you learn how to lead yourself, the next logical step is that you lead other people.
Secon Prince is the best keynote I've ever seen.
He really encouraged me so much.
He has this ability of seeing in people what they don't see in themselves.
He was so confident. When he was coming to the stage, you could see like, wow, this is a lion.
Any actor that's going for a role, they do a case study. If I'm going to be a fry cook, I go to a restaurant and watch people that are fry cooks. If I'm going to be a mob boss, I go and, well, maybe not go to with a mob, but you take some notes as to what they do. Our children are watching us. What can they reference when they step into our shoes? I do what I do because I believe that people have truly yet to understand their purpose. Once you know who you are, nothing can stop you. But until you know who you are, anything can. So my goal is to really help people to understand their purpose and their calling. And oftentimes they have the answers themselves, but they're not asking the right questions. So I help people to get to that place to where they look at themselves, they step back and they see how they've been a help to those around them and what really drives them. And from that, they really understand the value of it. They learn to value their value and see what value their value brings. Because a lot of people, they have yet to do that. Until you know who you are, anything can stop you. But once you know who you are, nothing can stop you. I want you to understand that you are blessed. That you are blessed to be a blessing. That there is somebody looking up to you. They're looking at you. Don't ever forget that. Because if you ever do, you're going to leave them without a model.
I've learned so much, and I've experienced a lot of interactions with people.
The practical approach, like you can't just sit down there, you have to walk up to an opportunity. Sometimes you have to grab the opportunity. Sometimes you have to fight for the opportunity. There's so much life lessons.
I think from today onwards, I'll stretch out and reach to higher levels.